So, for those of you that probably might not be aware, new Quantum Leap is now out. The series that had been hyped for some time finally premiered a couple of weeks ago. Now, obviously, as I've not been shy in pointing out that that Quantum Leap was one of my favorite shows growing up. It was actually one of the few shows that my sister and I watched together as kids. That's something I keep in mind. So definitely, this is a show I was actually very willing to especially because of the way the original show ended, and we'll probably get into that in just a bit. That, more than anything, was probably the main reason why, as far as reboots and remakes goes, and this even isn't technically a reboot, I'll get to that in a bit, this was actually one show I at least had been looking forward to. How has it worked out for me so far? Well, joining me again on the show tonight is James Faraci, and we're going to talk about this right now. James, welcome to the show once again.
Glad to be back.
So yeah, like I said, it was about a couple of weeks ago that the first episode of the new Quantum Leap series, and if I've got one difficult issue to go with right now, it's the fact that they had to premiere it on Mondays, which means now on Monday evenings, I gotta find a way to fit Radio Dead Air, WWE Raw, and now the new Quantum Leap in almost the same time period. So that's one of the reasons why, among all else, I really can't watch this show, a new episode of the show, until it premieres on Peacock the following Tuesday. So
that's what I do as well, so.
Yeah, and I actually think that might actually be hurting some things. Like, I don't know if you heard, but apparently there was a major drop in viewership with the second episode for some of the articles I read. But they actually brought up something really significant they might point out. I talked about those three things that I'm having to go that I'm going to have to go up against. Other two things, actually. But someone actually pointed out it's also having to go up against Monday Night Football. And that's never a good thing. So that makes me kind of wonder if it was the right call to put it on this particular day if that was the right call to do.
I don't know if it was the right call at all, because quite honestly, if you ask me, they should have moved it to a better time slot, because most people at 10 p.m. on the Eastern Standard West Coast, they're already at bed. Well, anyway.
Or they're watching Monday Night Football. It's usually probably one or the other. Yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to remember. I seem to recall at least one point in time the original actually aired on Sunday nights, if memory serves me correctly. I think it may have been one of those shows that kind of that sadly had its time slot bounced around back and forth throughout its 5-year run, but I definitely
probably more times than Sam Beckett had been bounced around through time.
But I do very much seem to recall it did air at one point in time on Sunday nights, and well, they weren't going to do that. Now that I think about it, they were not going to put NBC was not going to put Quantum Leap on Sunday nights because they've got Sunday Night Football. It's just that is just a terrible thing to do all the way around. But we're kind of talking about this, so we might as well try to get into the content as it is. For those not aware, right, this is not a reboot. This is not a complete remake. This is, as I believe I'd been heard months before it even debuted. This is more or less a continuation of the original series. It takes place in the present day, whereas, of course, the original was supposed to take place in the future of 1999, as it actually premiered.
Chris, this is something I want to talk about. In the pilot, they said it happened in 1995, which I don't know who got that wrong.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's something I'm actually willing to give them some slack over, because I was actually wondering when I was going to get a chance to point this out. This is something I remember very specifically about the original show. They did a lot of stuff. What they had to do to try to keep the setting of the project in 1999. They had a lot of problems with that as well, because I don't know if you recall this. Like, I seem to recall the first the first time they ever specifically mentioned that the project itself took place in 1999 was the 4th season premiere, The Leap Back. That, of course, was the one in which Sam and Al ended up switching places, and Sam became the observer. Remember, in that episode, they said that the quote-unquote present day, the day that the project was taking place in, was in September of 1999.
Right.
Fast forward to the 5th season premiere, the Lee Harvey Oswald episode.
Oh yeah, one of your best reviews, by the way.
Yeah, and remember, that episode also flipped back and forth between the period Sam was in and the future where the project is. In that episode, which again, a year after the leap back, they said the present day where the project was in February of 1999. And by the way, they do actually reference the leap back in that episode. So,
Yeah.
The original show had problems with its setting one way or another on there. So, you know, for them to actually more or less retcon and say it started in 1995, I really don't have a huge issue with that. That's something I can easily dismiss. But anyway, like I said, so whenever it took place, the original project took place in 1995 or 1999. This new series definitely does take place in the present day of 2022, and it's a whole group of people. Basically, for one reason or another, led by Ben, I'm trying to remember his full name here,
Dr. Benjamin Song.
Okay, yeah, have mostly tried to reinstate the project. And it's at the very least, it's a very similar situation to how the original started, because it does start with Ben basically going up against everyone else's, without anyone else's consent, spontaneously activates the project himself, and ends up leaping into another time. And now, this is a real one where this series is already from the get-go, is very much a split storyline, more or less, is the best way I could put it. Where we've got the situation where Ben is in a new time period every episode, and has to find some wrong to make right what's been wrong, yada yada yada, and all that. But at the same time,
that his last leap would be the leap home,
right?
Much like Sam.
But at the same time, we also are flipping back and forth again multiple times to the present day, where everyone else involved with the project is basically not only trying to find a way how they can bring Ben home, but also trying to find out why Ben did this. Why did he basically turn his back on everyone, and without getting approval of everyone else, and just go ahead and leap spontaneously like that? Of course, the main two we'll get. There
is a reason why that's happened.
I think they're trying to let hints into that, and we'll get into that in just a bit. Of course, some of the main people who are looking for trying to help find this out is, of course, someone who clearly is Ben's fiance, who is the observer in
Addison.
In this situation, Madison. And then there's
Addison,
someone else,
not Madison.
Addison.
Her name's Addison.
Yeah, Addison. Yeah. And then, of course, but more or less with Ben out, the more or less person who seems to be more or less taking most charge in the project is someone that I think is an absolute brilliant Easter egg. The only person that, first off, the fact that he's played by Ernie Hudson, which is a nice touch as well. But then the fact that so far, the only thing they call him by is magic. And if you know anything about the series, you know exactly who this is. I'm not going to be afraid to spoil this.
I know about him as well.
This is obviously Herbert Magic Williams, the guy Sam leaped into when he went to Vietnam. In the two-part
save his brother
in the two-part season premiere of season 3. Little doubt that's what it's.
Yeah, that was actually the first 2 episodes I actually saw, believe it or not.
But now we're still not trying to figure out if Magic actually knows that Sam had been him at one point in time. That actually hasn't been revealed, But we are finding,
I don't know.
We are
if
finding
that
out,
actually.
but what we've learned so far is that, more or less, that they have discovered that Ben was working in secret with someone else without the knowledge of everyone else officially on the project, and that person
Yes.
happened to be Miss Janet
Janet
Calavici,
Calavici.
one of Al's
Yes.
multiple
Al's
daughters.
daughter.
Right. Of course, they do have to mention that, sadly, Al Calavici is not with them anymore, which, of course, they had little choice but to do because Dean Stockwell passed away last
May he
year.
rest in peace.
Unfortunately, you have to wonder if how that may have affected everything and whatnot. But obviously, but yes, clearly, Ben had been working with Janice in some way, shape, or form. And again, I don't know if, I wouldn't call this a spoiler, more or less, because it hasn't actually been revealed at this time, but it does seem to kind of me like it's not really hard to guess what exactly is going on here, and
I think we all know.
and what Ben's primary ultimate objective with restarting the project was. Ben is trying to find out where Sam Beckett is. I don't think that's really a wild guess to go here.
And I'm willing to bet all this talk about how Scott Bakula's not involved in the new Quantum Leap.
We'll wait and see on
That's not true.
We'll get to that in a bit. Now, the question I have, and the wonder here is now what the exact reasoning for this motive is, as to what specific motivation Ben himself has in trying to bring back Dr. Beckett. I just got this gut feeling about this, and I'll just say this, without maybe giving away too much of my prediction right now. I would not be surprised if eventually down the line, they may end up having an interaction with one Sammy Joe Fuller, if you may recall who that is.
Sammy Joe Fuller. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
Well, okay, Sammy Joe Fuller is Sam Beckett's daughter.
Oh yeah,
the one he fathered with Abigail Fuller in the Daughter of Sin trilogy from season 5. And you will recall that episode, that 3-part episode ended with Al revealing to Sam that Sammy Joe had grown, with her mother having been saved. Sammy Joe went on to work on Project Quantum Leap. And she supposedly had a theory on how to bring him back that, of course, never came to fruition because of how that series ended and all the bullshit that went with there.
Yes.
Pardon my language there. But
yeah, it made my blood boil. It's one of those endings like, how could you do that? I've actually experienced that already after Quantum Leap ended with the series Angel, with how it ended like, we're going to best the bad guys, and it just cuts away to whatever. And that pissed me off. So,
well, at the very least, I could probably tell you that didn't Angel get a comic book series follow-up like Buffy did? So I think so. I think at least that thing got answered.
Yeah, and weren't there books that tried to like retcon the whole ending of Quantum Leap?
I don't know if it was ever officially tried to retcon. I do know there was there were a series of novelizations, and sadly I no longer have them in ones I had. I no longer have them in my possession. I'm kicking myself from that. I do remember there was at least one book that had that more or less it was dedicated. Then they said at the beginning of the book, they said it was dedicated to all the fans who truly believe Sam Beckett did make it home. That's about as close as I remember as much a call, because there might actually be some other books that I never picked up and read. Maybe they did follow up on that. I don't officially know. But yeah, I just have a feeling that we're going to have. My theory is, let's just say I think that Ben may have some connection to Sammy Joe in one way or another, and that's basically how this whole situation is connected. Now, as far as let's talk about general opinion of this series, I gotta say this. it's a show that I've definitely got a vested interest in still. But, and I'm not sure if this is a problem or not, but it's one where more or less the B plot of the series, which is the recurring plot of the series, is really the one thing that's got me still just interested in it. The actual leaps themselves, and I'm only 2 episodes in, that much I know. The actual leaps themselves haven't been pulling me in very well. Now,
Yeah,
like
that's
again,
something they got to work on, the leaps.
and I think that,
and balancing out the plots.
and I do
But
think there's one issue. I do think there's one that may be something that maybe connects to that. It's actually something that Nash himself mentioned in this when he posted some tweets after the first episode. It basically said, when he said basically 3 things. Where he said one quote said, "Damn it, I miss Al," and I really think that's. I think he's got a point there. That I think if there was anything that really drove the original series, it was that dynamic that Sam and Al had together. And I'm just not really seeing that so far yet between
yeah,
Ben and Addison on there. And I know a big problem with that is that, like I said, clearly they were engaged. And that's become one of those parcels of information that they're thinking they need to be withheld from Ben at this time. And that's definitely going to limit, I think, that situation. And that's an issue I think they've kind of got behind on this. And that's actually kind of got me worried. I'm going to say this. My really hope is, bad news is, I don't, and like I said, putting it on Monday, right at the start of football season, was a terrible idea. And I do have this kind of fear as to how much of a rope, how much of a leash NBC is going to have on this series. Now, it's my hope that, because they're immediately putting it on there a day later anyway, worst case scenario is they'll pull it from the network, but they'll keep broadcasting on Peacock, hopefully.
Exactly.
If that happens, I can live with that. Because, like I said, I'm probably one of those people, and Nash said this as well, it would be difficult for me to tune in. I'm one of those people that almost never watches the broadcast networks anyway, save for live sports. And that's like USA with Raw and the Premier League and everything. And that just might be another situation where I actually brought this up. The more and more I think, if NBC starts pushing more and more of their live programming onto their streaming service, that's just going to accelerate the death knell for primary terrestrial television as we know it. But that's a subject for another time, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's a weird situation. I'll say this is a weird situation where, like I said, I'm not incredibly impressed so far with this series so far, but I'm still compelled to watch it, just in the hope that they will finally give a better resolution to cover up just how terribly the original ended. I don't want to call this Stockholm Syndrome. It's not that. It's just this very sad situation where a show I really loved ended so poorly that I'm very much willing to stay with a very mediocre continuation just for the hope that it will fix that terrible ending from the better original. If that could be understood in any way.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Is that we're just gotta keep the faith that they'll get better with all the things, and maybe we'll see the leap that brings Sam home. Whether or not it brings Ben home, that's something that they're going to have to find a way to get through. And they got to balance out the plots. Like I said before, they have to balance out the plots, balance out the leap, balance it with how it's going to affect Ben getting home, how it affects the project, and affects Ziggy, and affects everything.
Great
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.